Hello, and welcome to the webinar, Always On Connectivity, Avoid the Consequences of Devices Going Dark, sponsored by floLIVE. I'm Chris Favre, and I'm the editor for OEM Off-Highway, and I'm happy to join you as the moderator for this webinar, as well as all of the webinars we are featuring for this year's OEM Industry Summit. Now, before we get to our feature presentation, here are a few tips to get the best experience during today's webinar. On your screen, there should be a tool on the left-hand side of your screen for you to enter and submit questions. Please type in your questions throughout the webinar. We've set some time at the end for our expert panelists to get through as many as we can. There also is a box within the platform with some additional content from floLIVE. Also, please take a minute after our webinar to complete the survey that can also be found on the audience console. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be on demand within 24 hours. You can find it through the link that was sent to you from registering, or you can find it on the OEM Off-Highway website. Now let me introduce today's expert. Curtis Govan is the President of Americas for floLIVE, and he is an accomplished leader with more than 25 years of broad experience and expertise in technology leadership, business development, and sales. He was most recently the GM Global VP Dealer and Heavy Equipment for Uptake, an industry leader in industrial artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. Welcome, Curtis. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be here. All right, we're ready to kick it off, Chris. By the way, this was a very smooth introduction. I feel really privileged on this introduction. Great instructions there. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining here today. The topic for today we wanted to talk about is something that we're hearing more and more from our customers on, and it's something that we thought we'd bring to the table and discuss, particularly for telematics there. And when we look at IoT service providers that are providing solutions, particularly in telematics, the greatest fear that we see people have when they come to us, when they come to others, is the fear of going dark. What that means is losing connectivity, whether that's a sunset of a network because the technology is going out, or just an outage, or any other reasons that may cause losing the connectivity. So we're hearing more and more the requirement of, look, I need always on connectivity, right? I need it for my devices today. I need it for new devices that are getting developed. So we're going to talk about, what that looks like from our perspective, what we're seeing as the challenges in the market. And then, of course, we'll talk about what we do at floLIVE to solve these problems. If you look at the paradigm for today, really what you have for the existing telematics connectivity is it's best effort coverage, right? Now, that doesn't always mean a bad thing there, because many of the single operator solutions have really good coverage. But we know just from our own personal experience, coverage is very personal. And think about thousands, if not millions, of devices out that are providing telematic services, and their individual coverage can really vary. But it's been best effort coverage today. So as a result of that, we knew that devices were susceptible to going offline for lack of coverage, either for minutes or for hours, for outages, all of these reasons. It was built into the solution to expect to not have continuous coverage. So the paradigm is you do store and forward reports, right? The other thing we see in the legacy solutions is that these solutions were really singular, right? Only a single technology, a single SIM from a single MNO. If you needed multiple MNOs, you didn't get them all in one SIM, you got multiple SIMs. You had a single configuration that was being supported, a single network that you can connect to. And that meant that you had pretty much a single point of failure, right? So this, if you look at it, is the fundamental issue that we've seen that people have as their worst fear of going dark, and the demand for always on connectivity. What does that mean? This is the new paradigm, by the way, is that we have always on connectivity where networks are not only highly reliable, but they're also highly performing. And that means that they're always on always performing at the optimal level. Well, how do you do that? We'll get into that conversation later. But it opens up the possibilities for new and improved telematic solutions that are always on. So now you don't have to have a store and forward solution. Now you have real-time reporting for solutions in the field. And that is what we're seeing is becoming more and more critical in the industry. And as we look at the future telematic solutions, this is absolutely mandatory, right? We look at solutions like video monitoring and autonomous driving. And what we're seeing is that, as this picture describes, is you'll have sensor data all over the place. That sensor data is getting fed from the vehicle gateways up to a cloud-based application. And as you can see, if there's sensors everywhere, you absolutely have to have always on seamless connectivity. That's just the reality of where we're going. If we look at the hurdles and what's happening today, and not only do we see that legacy solutions are demanding, higher quality, always on connectivity, it's absolutely mandatory, right? Many of the new applications, it's just mandatory for these new applications that they have this always on connectivity. That means that connectivity must be the same across multiple networks. And that includes multiple networks in multiple countries. What we've seen is that many of our customers that have larger scale deployments, like they understand that I can't have a single local MNO relationship, even if I'm just deploying regionally, even if I'm only deploying in one particular country. I need a solution that's multi-carrier. I need a solution that if I'm going outside of my single country into multiple countries, I need a solution that supports multi-carrier and multi-countries there. The consistently high-performing network that has low latency, low jitter, and high throughput, absolutely mandatory. Regulatory compliance is something that is prevalent and growing. We see many countries that have permanent roaming restrictions today, and we anticipate that more and more countries will have such requirements in the future. So you need to be prepared for that. And all of these things, they have to be consistent throughout the journey of the device. If you look at the picture from before, devices going everywhere, you can't have one service at one location, go to another location and have a completely different service, and quality of service has to be the same throughout the device's journey. And by the way, that journey also means that it needs to be the same at the point of manufacture, needs to be the same at the point of distribution, and then when it gets to the end customer, so you have that consistency there. So we're seeing that as some of the hurdles that we're facing in the industry of telematics. And what does it mean there when we look at some of the gaps? What's the cost of a device that is failing to meet the requirements that it has today, right? What does that actually mean to end customers? What does it mean to IoT enterprises there? You think about things like notifications that are for preventative maintenance. If you don't get that notification, you don't get the maintenance in time, you have equipment in the field that's out of service, you have solutions or vehicles that are breaking down, buses, cars, vehicles that are breaking down. And this is absolutely costly and really causes many, many headaches to telematics solution providers. Then we look at things like missing or extended gaps in reporting. I mentioned before the store and forward solution that now, as you'll see as we talk further, it's really not good enough. So if I'm missing a report, literally we have a customer that if they miss a report, the medicines that they're tracking are no longer valid. And so regulatory compliance, they don't meet regulatory compliance, and these medicines are thrown away. So you have trips there. We have customers that are tracking secure servers. And if they don't know where that server is 100% of the time, that's considered a breach. And they have to then file reports, make sure they go back and track and make sure that there's nothing that was done to those servers as they were in transit there. When we look at vehicles and farm equipment there, if they don't get optimization information in time, we end up with inefficiencies operationally. The field didn't get plowed at the right time, planted at the right time, harvested at the right time. Their vehicles, when we look at logistics, if they didn't get the update for the route that they need to take, they end up with inefficiency. Driver has to retrack, go back to a place that's out of the way because they didn't get information in time. So those operational efficiencies are also things that lead to additional costs. So ultimately, if you look at the impact of these cost gaps across, you end up with an enterprise, an end customer, I should say, that you don't get your goods or services in time, right? And ultimately, at the enterprise side, you also lose revenue, right? So this is really why it's really important in the industry to get these things right. So as we look a little bit deeper into what it means for the different use cases that we have, and as we transition and talk about the solutions, the first thing I want to do is say, let's look at fleet telematics. This one is really interesting from our perspective. I think we look at it much the same as environmental scientists look at frogs in an ecosystem, because we see a lot of things that are happening. This is, like, to me, it is the central piece of IoT, where you can look at what's happening with telematics, with fleet, with asset tracking there, and really get an insight into what's happening across the industry. So we look at this with our customer base there. We look at what we're seeing in the industry there, and we try to really hone in and understand this so we can use that information to deliver the products and services that these industries need. First, as the legacy piece here, a lot of this, I think many of you on the call here would know, existing track and trace. This is dots on a map, if you will. This is what we have today with the regulatory compliance that came in the US and Canada, I believe in 2017, and Canada followed in 2021. Now you have electronic logging, so you need to monitor everything with ELD devices there. That's a existing one. And then your standard asset tracking and protection solution. These are what we see as existing. The emerging piece is interesting. And we'll talk about this when we go a little bit into the technology later, but you have emerging solutions in video surveillance. Now you may say, well, video surveillance has been around a while, but we're seeing more and more use of video surveillance in telematics in particular. In the early days, we saw they had the track and trace device that got smarter. It was now tracking different things in ODB2 devices there. We had braking information, driver distraction, all of these things were tracked. But we then start to see, well, okay, now we're going to have a camera facing the driver. Then we had cameras forward facing. Now we're seeing cameras that are rear facing as well. So in some vehicles, we're seeing 3 cameras, along with the standard track and trace components with the vehicle there. So the video surveillance from that perspective has increased, as well as some just regular video that's monitoring the logistics sites as well. The other piece there and emerging there is we've seen really what you've seen with the big logistics players and how they've optimized their processes and digitized them on tablets and doing all of the maintenance records, doing delivery reports and delivery notifications, all digitized there. We're seeing that continuing to grow. Under vehicle theft prevention, many of you will probably say, well, this has been around for a while, and definitely it has. We put this in this category because we see it emerging because we're seeing, from our perspective, a lot of growth in this area beyond what we've seen in the past. So we see this as a growing area where you'll see an increased number of devices that are doing theft prevention, not just for vehicles that we've seen before, your classic aftermarket solutions. We're seeing some solutions that are coming out aftermarket, as well as with other types of vehicles and assets as well. So this for us is a growing area. Under the developing side, it's really about EVs. in the story around their need for location information for different things. Where's the local charging station closest to it, reporting in information about the vehicle. Very interesting story on this area where really these companies are really they are more software companies getting tons of data from devices there. So we're seeing a lot of requirements come in from there. And then, of course, the subsequent components of that is autonomous driving that's coming about. And that's going back to the initial picture where you're seeing sensors that are going to provide data to devices in the field. And devices are likewise going to provide data back to those sensors. So you can have really the community sharing of that data. So you understand traffic conditions, whether or not there's bumps in the road, a light's out of service, things like that. We know that EVs are leading the charge to that, which I think will eventually precipitate into all vehicles, even if they're not EVs. And then, that vehicle to everything is really a part of all of that as well. And really, if you look there kind of at the final statement here, the solution across what we're seeing is we need a need for LPWA, which we'll talk about in a minute, and a need for 4G networks, right? And then the other piece is, I mentioned before, we need greater latency and coverage requirements, which greater latency should be lower latency there, if you will. But the coverage requirements, it's always on. Latency in the high performing network is what we would term it there, is an absolute mandate for the solutions and the evolution of these solutions as we see them. Okay. Now, as we transition to the solutions, I'll speak a little bit about floLIVE, if you will, and just kind of introduce there what we do, not only from the technologies here, but just who we are as a company. So if you look at us in a nutshell, and I'll say this fairly bold statement, and I know I'm using very specific words, but if you look at what we do multi-carrier, multi-country, global connectivity better than anyone in the world. It's a very bold statement, and I know. It is the toughest problem in connectivity to do. Global connectivity, multi-carrier connectivity is an extremely tough problem. We've done it better than anyone because we own the core network. We own our technology. We own the core network, the connectivity management platform, our multi-IMSI technology is all floLIVE. That gives us a distinct advantage in what we do. This technology is all floLIVE. Our engineers built it, they deploy it, they manage it. It's floLIVE engineers. And we've used this to really put together this seamless solution that we have that is delivering that hyperlocal global connectivity that we'll talk about in a minute. And it is the best multi-carrier, multi-country global connectivity solution in the world, right? So when we look at the technologies, these are key components for us. Obviously, this is the front end. If you look at the radio, you look at coverage, this is where we get it from the different technologies. The very interesting thing for us is the growth of technologies for IoT. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you had no IoT specific technology. You used the technology that was built for mobile phones and adapted it to IoT, but it really wasn't IoT specific. Cellular LPWA introduced that. And we've seen a lot of the legacy telematics solutions really apply these solutions there for lower cost of modules, solutions that only require small bandwidth. We see them using it. And then the most important part is the battery savings, right? The power save mode, the EDRX components that are in this technology there are super critical for those type of assets and those type of solutions. So we see a lot of that in solutions. I mentioned the growing area of video surveillance. That's where we're seeing the LTE today, and we think 5G in the future really come into play. That's why I think people have 3 cameras, because you have the technology in the vehicle to support live streaming of those information. Now, most of that, as you know, is done offline, so they don't send all the video live back, but they send. If there's an accident, we see live streaming there, which is really important for that industry. And you can do that with LTE and with 5G, with the high speed and the lower latency there. On the satellite side, this is the new one that is the buzz in the industry. I literally have not had a technology in my career that I've heard of more talk of and more excitement from customers wanting to deploy it. We have dozens of customers now that are piloting the solution, developing devices there. This brings the satellite and the cellular piece together like never before. So now you don't have to have 2 different modules to support the solution and do multitasking between the 2, or turn one on and turn one off there. Now you can run cellular and satellite at the same time, which really changes the game for a lot of the asset tracking solutions there, for those gaps in coverage where coverage is low or the performance is low, where there are areas like rail and marine solutions there that don't have really good coverage there. This is I think, going to be a significant game changer. We're seeing a lot of traction around this. So all of these are technologies that we use today and that are combined in our solution. All right. Get my mouse switch situated. Okay, so talking a little more about the floLIVE solution in general. So we have the technology above, and we'll show you how that gets combined into the single solution before. But if you look at the SIM technology, again, we're going to talk about, before we talked about the paradigm being singular. Now we're going to talk about the new paradigm being multi. And that multi theme is definitely present in the SIM. As you can see here to the left, floLIVE, we have our advanced UICC SIM. So this is your standard plastic SIM that you've been getting for decades now. We introduced into the solution our multi-MC technology. So now we take up to 10 profiles from a different MNO. So think of it as taking 10 MNO SIMs and putting it into one. And we have logic within the SIM that seamlessly transitions between the different profiles so that you connect always. If you lose connection, it switches so you can connect to a better network there. If you're in a different country and you need service with a different profile in that country, it automatically makes that switch there. So a lot of technology within that advanced EUICC solution there to better service customer needs there. And then, of course, you know, the industry developed the standard EUICC. So we're talking SGP02 and 22 and soon to be 32. But in addition to that, we've advanced that solution with putting the floLIVE multi-MC technology within an EUICC profile. So you have the best of both worlds for this solution. All right. So now getting really to the meat of what we do at floLIVE. If you look at our platform to the right here, I mentioned earlier, we own all of these components there. This one adds in the EUICC RSP. This is the part that we don't own. It's very well done by our partners. We work with 3 of the largest EUICC or EUM manufacturers in the world, and we use their platform for that. We also use it for not only IoT, but also for consumer. But the rest of the pieces here you see are floLIVE. We own them. Our core network is everything from an HLR HSS to P gateways to SMSCs to MMEs. All of the network components we own. We simply connect into the carrier basically at the radio, and they route everything back to us. Right? So you look at all of the technology here, and we put this all together to form our hyperlocal global connectivity solution that we say is the best in the world for multi-carrier, multi-country connectivity. We do this, and I think we solve the two toughest problems that we see in IoT, or should I say the two toughest requirements. The first is, and I mentioned this earlier, networks that are highly available and highly performing, and then operational efficiency. When we talk to customers, these are the two fundamental things that they're asking for. So if we look at high availability, that starts with coverage. We've integrated with over 27 MNOs in 40 different POPs around the world, our carrier-grade core network. That's a key component. Our core network integrated directly with MNOs around the world in 40 different locations, right? This gives us the best coverage in the world. Hands down, we can say this definitively, no one in the world will have better coverage than us because we have up to 10 coverage options on every SIM with redundancy built in for every country. And now that we have release 17 satellite services there, we add additional coverage on top of that. So coverage is now solved. In addition to developing the network in the various regions, because we have it in various regions, 40 POPs around the world, the other piece that'll come into play is that performance of low latency. This is something that we hear over and over again that's really critical for, particularly for battery-powered devices that are traveling around the world. I'll share with you in a minute the benefits of that. Those solutions absolutely need the lower latency that they need. So if you look at what they would do, they would traditionally deploy a local MZ because I need a local carrier because I need the latency. But from a business perspective, they wanted a global carrier, so they only have one relationship and one SKU. We've solved that problem by putting everything into one and doing local latency with local breakouts in different regions here. If you look at operational efficiency, and we've talked about this at nauseam with customers, and they simply tell us, like, look, it's absolutely necessary for scale. If I have multiple agreements, if I have multiple SIM SKUs, if I have different platforms to integrate with, it's far too complex to support scaling my business. So they need a single solution. The floLIVE system that you see that shows up in the top there by the floLIVE platform, and all of the networks that we have, the 40 POP, the 27 MNOs, 40 POPs, they're all integrated into a single solution so that the customer only has one solution that they need to connect in with a single SIM SKU. They can access not only every network, they can access also use the multi-MZ technology to switch between those and make that a very seamless, globally consistent solution there. Lastly, I will say the system is multi-tenant, multi-tier, so you can adapt your business to fit your specific needs. And when we look at telematics in particular here, we know people have distributors, different go-to-market strategies there. This solution, unlike any in the world, is built to support the different levels, down to 4 levels, like no other solution. I'll go in now and talk about the benefits, because I want to come back to and finish up with the benefits and then talk about what we do for specific solutions. If you look at the first one that we would talk about, first one is latency that I mentioned there, and I'll build this out so we don't have to wait. I mentioned this before, that how critical it is for battery-powered solutions to have lower latency. If you look at these numbers here, and this is what we see on average across the world when we have local breakout, over 160 milliseconds of savings per message. If you think about how messaging works, and typically people are using TCP, so they have to open the socket, they have to send the data, they have to close the socket, all of these handshakes that happen, every message you're saving 160 milliseconds. If you look at the add up of this, these are phenomenal battery saving components here that are absolutely mandatory. I mean, it's amazing. We've seen this with customers that use the solution here, and they've done some other optimization there. And we've seen battery savings in the neighborhood of 30–40%. So that piece is really critical. And we can do it because we own the core network. We deploy the core network around the world, globally distributed. In some cases, we only need to deploy PGWs in a local region. But we can deploy PGWs around the world to meet the specific requirements, unlike anyone else in the world. And we can do it very rapidly. I'll say in a recent case, we did PGW deployment in 6 weeks in a country to solve a latency problem for a particular customer there. As we go on to some of the other benefits that we look at, I mentioned in many cases here that we hear coverage is king. And certainly the fact that we have all of the MNOs that we've integrated with on a single SIM, single SKU gives us the best coverage. The performance piece we talked about from a latency perspective, but we also talk about that from just the network availability. Within that single SIM, because you're able to put in multiple MNOs in a profile, that redundancy is not just there for coverage piece, it's also there from a performance perspective. So if you had one network fail, which we've seen, you can seamlessly switch to another network within that same SIM automatically, right? So that performance is that always on. I lose connectivity here because they had maintenance, because they had an outage, ran out of coverage, whatever the case may be, you seamlessly switch. So that now when we look at the high performing networks, that's a key piece that we're delivering here. From a support perspective, I will say we have literally the best support I've ever seen. Because we own the core network, and I'm saying this over and over again, I know it may seem redundant, but it's so important to what we do because our support team, they're really tier 2, tier 3 support. They have access to all of the core network infrastructure. They can go in and see what's happening, pull logs, examine those logs, and resolve problems, identify problems quicker than anyone in the industry. That's unprecedented from my perspective. I've never seen this in the industry, that a support team at really what we would say is tier 1, but they're really tier 2, tier 3, they're able to do it. From a security perspective, this is really important to the industry. We realize that, and we've built the solution from the ground up to be secure from the platform perspective, from two-factor authentication to blocking SIMs to particular IMAIs to supporting technology like IoT Safe. Another thing that we do is data routing. So you can route your data securely to a specific location, the same location around the world, not only for performance perhaps, but also to ensure that around the world you're getting the same data routing and security for that data around the world. From a compliance perspective, we talked about this already, the permanent roaming thing that's definitely in play and growing. We offer permanent roaming solutions in almost all of the regulated areas. There are a few that are, I'll say they're in conflict now that we don't have, and a couple that are in process as we speak. But that's absolutely necessary. We realize that that's something that our compliance team is staying ahead of and understanding where those further requirements will come. And so we're offering that. Data sovereignty, obviously GDPR requirements that have been out for now a long time now, and we're seeing those in other countries as well. We're able to support that. And then also just the reporting piece that I mentioned earlier. This is one that I was really surprised when I heard the new requirements that were coming for the medicines during COVID. We saw a number of customers that were tracking COVID vaccines and the reporting requirements there that came into play from the local regulatory agencies, some in Japan that we were working with, some here in the US. That was absolutely necessary to have the reporting to meet that compliance. Then from a control perspective, the platform is really designed for real time, right? Everything is real time, from our billing to our events that are happening from the network side. You're able to real time select what MZs you're using. So if you want to switch remotely and the device is connected, you can do that through our platform as well. And we also have functionality like steering that allows full control over the complete life cycle of the SIM and the device and its connectivity there. From a cost perspective, we will always say, again, the ownership of the technology is a key piece for offsetting costs, right? Our offloading costs. So we own our core, so we're offloading costs from the MNOs that we work with there. They pass that cost savings on to us, and then we pass that on to our customers. In addition, because of the way we're deployed in the network, we have the flexibility of doing cloud-based solutions. We can do on-prem solutions there as well. That also gives us some additional cost savings that we can pass on to our customers. That functionality as well, when we talk about longevity, also prepares us from a longevity perspective. The cloud-based, cloud-native solution there also gives us a longevity play where we're adapting the solution, much like you would solutions like Salesforce. Updates just happen, right? Seamlessly over the air, you get updates to all of the core infrastructure, all of the connectivity management platforms seamlessly there. The other thing that we'll say from a longevity perspective, because this comes up, is if you look at, let's say the worst case is the advanced EUICC, where we have multi-MZ EUICC profile within a SIM, as well as the EUICC capability with 22 or 32 or O2. Then we're able to, if there were a change in the network, somebody sunsets a network and we have either the MZ, a secondary MZ already in the profile, or we need to download a new EUICC profile, it really allows us to extend that longevity of a device in the field so that we can not have that device go dark and give people more time to go out and replace devices. We've seen the sunsets happen with 2G and 3G. We're in the US, I should say. And we know this is a normal cadence that we'll see in the industry there. Although I will say I think it'll be much more difficult to sunset 4G. But we're preparing for that with the longevity play that you can extend the life of the SIM in one way or another and not have to worry about having to get out and replace that SIM in the field immediately. All right, one more slide and then we'll open it up for questions. The next piece we want to talk about is really, what does this mean in terms of customizing the solution for, particularly for telematics. I'll say when you look at what we've done from a global connectivity perspective, we see that we've advanced the solution from a telematics perspective so that our connectivity is not standard connectivity, but it's really advanced connectivity specifically for telematics, right? When we look at the emergence of new requirements for both legacy and new telematic solutions, our solution, the advanced solution that we have, really meets those requirements that we talked about earlier. So we do things like use case optimization. From data routing that I mentioned earlier, I route the data to the right place so I can lower the latency so I can meet compliance there. We do things like network optimization there, where we optimize parameters on the network to optimize throughput, to optimize latency as well. So that optimization is completely built in our solution. Like we have a tremendous amount of bells and whistles and variables to exercise to optimize the whole of the solution, either from a business side, when you're talking about the connectivity management platform, the operational side, and then from just the device performance side as well. Regulatory compliance, as I mentioned, we have that sorted out in almost all of the regulated countries. We would particularly point out challenges and where we see most of our traction in Brazil and Turkey, in China, and as well as in India. From a global connectivity perspective there, of course, I mentioned multiple times the coverage component there, the best coverage in every world with redundancy in each of those countries as well is absolutely critical with the multi-MC functionality. And then just lastly, looking at the flexibility that we have with the platform, as I mentioned there, the platform is really built to customize to specific requirements. Our network is customizable. And I'll emphasize that just for a minute because You have to realize that if you don't own the network, no operator will optimize a network that they're using for mobile phones for an IoT device. And we do this every day for IoT devices, optimize to meet the specific requirements of cameras, of asset tracking devices, of dash cams. We do that with our service because we own the core network there. And then, of course, the technologies that we mentioned earlier, we're supporting all of the technologies from legacy stuff like 2G, coming into the new age, things like LPWA, satellite, 4G, 5G, all of these technologies are supported. So within that single SIM, single SKU, you can have access to all of that. I'll wrap up with maybe just a bit of summary. Look, we see, across the telematics industry, like I said, it's really like the frog in our ecosystem. We see it's tremendous number of changes and growth in the industry still. And the requirements coming out are extremely interesting to analyze and to build solutions around, because we think those requirements are going to be the same around the rest of the IoT industry. Just beyond telematics. So I think what you'll see is that floLIVE is extremely well positioned to meet all of these evolving needs. We're a young, growing company with technologists that make up 70% of our company, and we are on the cutting edge of designing new technology to meet the demands that we see, not only for telematics but across the IoT industry. So that's all I have for the presentation. I will now open it up for questions, please.
All right. Well, thanks, Curtis. That was a lot of really good information about fleet management and telematics. So I appreciate you giving us a very thorough overview of the topic. So yeah, we'll begin the Q&A session, and attendees, if you haven't submitted a question yet, please take a second to shoot those over to us using the Q&A box. Any questions we don't get to today will be collected for our presenter to answer for a future online article. So we got about 20 minutes. We have a little under 20 minutes, so maybe we'll get through all of these, but we'll lead off with this one. How does always-on connectivity impact the overall efficiency and productivity of fleet management?
Yeah. Look, I think the number one thing is that you don't have to worry about connectivity. Right? One of the things that I focus our company on is we wake up every day thinking about connectivity, but almost none of our customers do. Right? We have MVNO customers that do and MNO customers that do, but the people that are doing solutions are not waking up thinking about connectivity. They're trying to sell a solution for some sort of business efficiency application. So I think the number one thing is that you literally don't worry about the connectivity. Devices are connected. You don't have to worry about it. Now, of course, things happen, right? And when they do, it's about time to resolution. How quickly can we resolve a problem so you can get back to focusing on your core business there? And with the tools that we have, the fact that everything is real time, you're seeing from a network perspective, we're opening the black box so you see what we see. And then we're able to triage issues and resolve them much faster in that fashion. So I think that's where you get the greatest efficiency there, is that you simply, you don't worry about the connectivity. And when there is something that occurs, you're able to quickly triage and get to a solution or identify the reason very quickly.
Yeah. And, as far as, the problems go, that slide where you had the, talking about, the challenges companies face, I looked at, maintenance, and, I saw that and I thought maintenance, probably, I think, leads to all the other problems that a company could face if there are issues or there are gaps or connectivity issues. Like, if maintenance feeds into everything else.
It definitely does. Yeah, we see, I have a bit of a history with the uptake in the dealer and heavy equipment space there. And, this was all about maintenance and preventative maintenance there. So we know that if the solution is robust, then we can get the necessary reports in to provide that preventative maintenance history and reporting. So, those maintenance activities can happen without things going offline.
And certainly, community sharing, you talked about that, being able to be transparent and have a way to, all that information is readily accessible so that everybody has like a wider, if not a complete picture, a pretty comprehensive picture of what's happening in their facility or their operations.
Yeah, this is one that I'll tell you, when people see it, it's almost like they don't believe it, because it's opening up the black box. And if you look at it, first, the way the ecosystem is built is we have solution providers that own the end customers. We don't own the end customer, they do. So they want to provide the absolute best service to their customer, and they want to be able to do it as fast as possible. How do they do that? Well, they need access to the same things that I need access to, and we give them that access. So that transparency in the data and having it in real time, so that they're not waiting, hey, I got to wait for a minute for this to update. No, it's updated in real time. You can see it. And them understanding their application and seeing the network information there is the absolute best way to triage problems. I'll tell you many, many times, if I'm on my side and I can see something on my side, but I don't know how the device application works, to the nth degree. They will know that, and then they see the network information. It really is super powerful in helping them resolve issues fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you say like, almost for some of the people who are new to this, almost seems too good to be true, doesn't it? Like how could it possibly be this way?
Yeah, it is. I'm in the industry now for 17 years in IoT, and we were doing it before. We were not doing it in full real time the way we do it now. Right. As we now have it in real time, like it just blows people away, because we can demonstrate it. Like I can power on my device, and I'm the engineer, so I have a desk full of devices here.
Yeah.
And we power on device, and you see that device come on in real time. You look at it. Yeah. It's in you can see it on the screen. And so yeah, it's something that we love to show. Like part of our strategy in selling is that we show, because what we have is real. And we know it's unbelievable. So it's like, we know that a lot of people won't believe it unless they see it. So we show it.
Yeah, for sure. Next question asks, what are the most common causes of connectivity gaps in fleet telematics, and how can they be mitigated?
Yeah, it's coverage. We had more than a few customers that I mentioned one that was tracking vaccines. And they literally sent devices from one coast to another, from west to east and back. And with a single SKU, you will have coverage gaps, because there are places in the country that you name the operator, they don't have coverage, or they don't have good coverage, or they don't have the bands that your device supports, whatever the case may be. This is the single biggest reason for loss of coverage. Like, of course, there are network outages that happen, and those are intermittent and fairly rare. But that coverage piece is really the piece. That's why I say, always coverage is key.
As for some industries, some locations, that can be easier said than done, because in a factory, that's one thing. There might actually be almost, too many devices, running on top of each other. But you get into some remote locations, like a mine, or, in the middle of the woods or whatever, that's a unique circumstance that in the off-highway industry is somewhat common.
Yeah, I would agree. What I'll say, what we do for places like mines and factories, places that have a collection of devices that might overwhelm one particular cell site, we provide a private core network. It's a floLIVE core. with another RAN. We plug it in, and now we could also support the seamless transition for devices that are in the factory that are going to go on a trip. And we can support them in the factory, and when they leave the factory, automatically switch over to the public network there. So that's one way we solve that problem for both of those industries.
Yeah. Let's see. Our next question says that a lot of acronyms were said today. Do we have any educational material on getting better up to speed on some of the acronyms and terminology cited today?
Yeah, certainly. I would go to floLIVE.net. It's a first start there. And, happy to, if you post a question there that you want to have some more information, we're happy to share, other public sites, whether it's 3gpp.org or any place else. We can give you the right guidance there.
Awesome. Next question asks, who is your satellite partner, and does it require a dedicated terminal, or is it direct to SIM?
Yeah, good. Our current satellite partner is Skylo, which they use Inmarsat for one of their providers there. But we're integrated with Skylo today, our core network with their core, just like Skylo looks to us like another MNO provider. So I showed the multi-MZ slot. You could have a slot that has Skylo on it, so you could switch to that. And really, to do it today, it's all within a single module. So you need to have a module that supports Release 17 there, or chipset if you're building from a chipset. And then it's seamless. It's running over NB-IoT. You do need to switch the modes on the module today. I believe in Release 18 or 19, they're going to seamlessly switch between modes. But you switch between modes, and if necessary, switch the MZ, and you're connected to satellite. So it's all within a single module now. That's the really beautiful thing about it is now you can save on your BOM. You don't have to have a satellite module and a cellular module. It's all in one.
All right, it's got about 5 minutes, everyone. So if you've got any questions, we're happy to have them. The question asks, is talking about the connection piece for telemetrics, does it include any hardware for the actual data acquisition, storage, and or reports back to the OEM?
Yeah, I think I understand this question. I'll answer it, and if not, please repost. So floLIVE, we provide the connectivity as a service. So think of us as, we're giving you the SIM card, whether it's any form factor, a physical or MFF2 SIM. We provide that SIM, and we're the back-end connectivity. So when your device powers up, it connects to a network, it's going to come back to the floLIVE core network, right? So we're selling you the data piece, SMS, and voice shortly. That's coming through floLIVE. The other components there would be an application provider. By the way, one of our investors, if you go to floLIVE.net, you'll see who that investor is. They have a very nice solution for asset tracking solutions here.
Next question. There it is. How can fleets assess the potential risks and costs of going dark versus investing in a reliable connectivity solution?
Well, I think fleets know today. And I say that because, I've worked with some of the major fleet telematics companies in the world. And when you get to a tipping point, you have millions of devices deployed, all of the problems. What the solution just on paper can do. And then we invite everyone to test. Like we don't expect people to sign up without testing. We will send demo SIMs, give you full access to the platform to see. Like I said, we know people want to see to believe, and so we show. So we would highly recommend that.
And you know, when you put together your solutions for your fleet management systems, what's like a good ROI? How fast can companies realize their ROI on this?
Yeah. I will say this part of it is not our game, right? It's outside of our peer review, but the I'll tell you, I have multiple people that I have tremendous amount of respect for their businesses. I was a part of their business when they had a few thousand devices, and now they have multiple millions. I will connect you to the right person to get you those ROI tools because that is important. I was on a panel a few years ago now, and we talked about in every case, it's the ROI is the most critical point. People want to know what I'm getting out before what I'm expected to get out before I get in, right? So we're very adamant there when we work with people that are asking these type of questions to point them in the right direction of the people that can get them these answers. And like I said, the solution providers I know have multiple millions of devices, and they can definitely give you the right guidance on, an ROI tool to get the results, understanding that you're looking for.
Yeah, and downtime is as I say, is fatal in many industries. But and with some of the industries that OEM off highway covers, particularly like mining, construction, and ag, the cost per minute, much less per hour, is exorbitantly higher because the machines and the equipment involved cost that much more than, say, what you might see in a factory. And not to say it's not expensive, but one device equals 40 perhaps in another facility.
Yeah, we this is also something we see. I've seen multiple cases on. I remember years ago we did a presentation to an oil and gas company, and they said, "Look, if we have an outage, it's $100,000 an hour plus." And wow, that's something you want to resolve quickly. Another case in Europe where they had a machine on the manufacturing line, and it was similar numbers, right? $500,000 a day for them. So the outage, we know it's really critical. This is why we emphasize connectivity that's always on, that has that redundancy built in. And I'll tell you, for these customers now, this is what we're delivering to them, where they're seeing, I've got a problem, even if it's a degradation in performance, which can happen, right, for any number of reasons. Degradation in performance, you have the ability within the single SIM, single SKU, to switch over to another network that has better performance. Complete loss of service, you automatically switch over, or you can control it from the device application as well. Yeah, we definitely realize like that always on pieces, it is the new paradigm. It is what is demanded from the industry there, which is why we built the solution as we have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And great closing statement on that, Curtis. So that's going to do it for the Q&A. Brings this webinar session to a close. And once again, I'd like to thank Curtis for his insights and expertise here today on this topic. It was a terrific presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you as well. Thank you all.
Yeah. So attendees, you'll be receiving an email from us soon with access to today's playback and presentation. But please also feel free to visit oemoffhighway.com to check out more on this topic and browse other topics in our bank of educational webinars. And again, please be sure to fill out our survey and let us know how we did, as we take this feedback to enhance our future webinar experiences. Thanks again to Curtis and floLIVE for presenting and sponsoring this, and thank you all for taking the time to join us. Our final webinar for day 2 of the OEM Industry Summit will begin in 1 hour. So I hope to see you there. Have a good one.